Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 1098 to 1099 for the 25th to 26th of February 2025. Situation report or the summary or the SITREP or I sit you report. No, you sit I report. So anyway, just before I start, there's an enemy hiding behind the like button. No, send your FPV drone, to hit it. Yeah. So anyway, let's start off with where should we go first? Kursk front. So we're going to do the Kursk front, and then we will do the clockwise direction. So over at the Kursk front, this is Kursk front, and where is Kursk? Yeah, Kursk is here. This is Kursk front. So in case you do not know, if you in case you thought that the Ukrainians are very close to Kursk, no, they are Kursk, so they are not going to get near to Kursk. So anyway, over at the western flank, we have the Russian mapping have mapped that they have advanced on the 24th of February. Wait. So I got it wrong. I changed the date. It's actually 24th to 25th of February, the SITREP, because today is 26. No, this 26 is not over. You cannot do SITREP for it. So it's day of 1097 to 1098. And yeah, Putin's fault. Is the Russians. The Russians, they hack my brain. So all this Russian. Anyway, on the 24th, the Russians, the pro-Russian source mapped that the Russians have advanced all the way to basically the border. They have basically secured the border between Russian and Ukraine territory in the south of Nikolai-Budarino and Svetikovo. So this led to some kind of attack being noted around here, Basivka, and of course at Novosilka, basically around here. So they advanced to this point. There is no clear indications whether the Russians will continue on into Sumy yet. This is just the front line, marked by Rybar, the pro-Russian source. There is fighting reported at Lebedevka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. As usual, Kursk front is all Russian Defense Ministry. And in this area here, we have the geolocation that confirms the Russians have reached Lebedevka. Why the hell did I feel like I said it so many times? Wait. Okay, I changed it after 30 seconds. I found out what's the problem. You never press the like button. So the fighting is reported at Lebedevka, and over the northern flank we have some updates. So other than the fighting at Nikorsky, there is some major changes around the northern flank. At the northern flank, we have the confirmation of the Russians more or less captured Pokrovsk, and they have allegedly also have captured Orlovka. So based on the Ukrainian mapping, the Ukrainian mapping actually did not note this to be the case, but based on our mapping, the Russians most likely have basically captured Pokrovsk. So this is a bit confusing, right? So this is geolocation. So this area here is confirmed Russian capture. Then in the latest Ukrainian update, they have mapped that this area here is also confirmed to have been lost to the Russians. So this area here, this area here is Russian claim. This area here is Ukrainian disclaim. So what we have confirmed is that the Russians have advanced, have taken all of these grounds north of Merevka. They have basically taken almost the entirety of Pokrovsk, almost the entirety of Pokrovsk, as well as the western part of Pokrovsk, as well as the west of Orlovka. This area here is currently based on Russian claim. They claim that they have captured Orlovka. We cannot confirm this just yet. The Ukrainians did at least map that this area here is pretty much almost like a gray zone. They are not entirely wanting to commit to it, but that's the current situation around here, with the Russian taking a lot of grounds over in this northern flank of the Pokrovsk front. So a very, very good situation for the Russians, a very, very bad situation for the Ukrainians. So based on the situation here, it looks like the Ukrainian lines have broken, and the Ukrainians most likely have fallen back to Novaya Sorokina, to the railway lines, to the forest regions. Potentially, they can still continue to hold a position or keep the front line more or less around this area for a long time if they continue to commit to it. The question is whether the Ukrainians is planning to commit to this defense of this northern flank or not. So that is the big question here. So there is still a lot of grounds. We're talking about, like, this all the way down to Nikolsky is 7 kilometers. So there is still a lot to fight for. And the Russians, this northern part, this area here is around 1.6 kilometers. From west to east is around 2.4 kilometers. So it is quite a bit of grounds that the Russians have captured. So that's the situation over there. There is also mention of Yuzhny on the 24th. Not entirely like important, but it's just that it's part of this western flank stuff, that the Russians are attacking too. But no, that's about it. There's a lot of shellings being reported by the Russians. In the north of Sudja, we have Kubakin, Kozhaja Loknya, Pervikanazi, Zaleshenka, Robeskina, Gogolevka, Gocharovka, and Sudja. So we have quite a number of shelling around here, as well as just nearby Oleshnya. But in this southern flank, we have fighting reported at Manovka, Malovoe, Krylovka, as well as Goevo. So these are the various places that the Russians are currently pushing. Strategically, nothing have changed. Previously, we have reported of the Russian success in this sector. As you can see, the grey out region, grey out polygons around here, which is reported on the previous situation report, which was published on the DPA War channel. So for those that have missed the frontline changes report, I did mention that I'm planning to move all the Ukraine war reports back to the main channel, which means SITREP frontline changes report and most likely conclusions as well will be all on the main channel, this channel. The war channel will in turn be reporting all the other wars. And for the Ukraine wars, content for the war channel is probably analysis, battlefield analysis and frontline history maybe, so those will be on the war channel. So so this is just a reorg because I'm trying to react to the the algorithm, and I feel like I kind of given up, and I wanted to just put the content that most likely will get the most views on the main channel, so that we can reach 100k, because tentatively it's really hard to compete if we don't have the subscribers. So yeah, which is a good reminder to subscribe. Over in Velyky Bobrik, there is a geolocation of an S-300 surface to air missile system getting destroyed in this region southeast of Sumy. So it's interesting that they still have surface to air missile systems, which means that the hypothesis that they don't have maybe is, or they run out of it, or most of it, maybe it's not entirely accurate, but maybe they still have it, but they are conserving ammunition, and also try to hide their radars, and they are only using it to make sure that the Russians cannot conduct deep airstrikes. They have to do standoff airstrikes using the fat bombs. So that is possibly what's happening. Over in the Kharkiv front, this is Kharkiv. We have mention of Lipsy and Voschansk. Basically, Lipsy is mentioned mainly by the Russian Defense Ministry on both days, with Russians allegedly attacking Lipsy, or perhaps just shelling Ukrainian forces in this area here at the Lipsy sector. At the Voschansk sector, we have fighting reported. Voschansk is reported by both Russian and Ukrainian Defense Ministry. There's most likely still the skirmishes in the total ruins around here. This city is very flattened. It reminds me of Stalingrad in World War II. So it is the kind of situation where the battles is very localized and are very ambushy, snipery, and remember to press the like button. And so that's about it in this Kharkiv front. We move all the way to Voronezh front. In the northern flank of the Voronezh front, we have the Russian Defense Ministry announced the capture of Topoli on the 24th, and the Russian mapping have reacted by mapping the Russians have taken the rest of Topoli. This is a Russian claim, however, so this is not confirmed. So the Topoli was mentioned by Deep State UA of the frontline changes around here, but they did not map it like Topoli have been lost. But what is interesting is actually the mention of Kanyamka by the Russian Defense Ministry on both days. So if the Russians claim is true, and maybe they have a much bigger area of control, which is I think is the case, because you can't really say you conquered Topoli without a bigger buffer. I think the Russians are currently pushing towards Kayamka and probably also doing a crossing at the same time towards Kayamka. So probably this is what is happening around here. Fighting is reported on both days at Kayamka. Over in the southern side at Voronezh itself, Ukrainian forces are conducting major counter-offensive operations reported by Rybar, the pro-Russian source. They say that the Ukrainians are launching counter-attack along the Voronezh and Zaporizhzhia line, which is around here. And some of this effect was geolocated with the Ukrainian forces taking some grounds, moving in the direction of the highway. But the main push seems to be between the two towns. Maybe they're trying to cut the highway or cut the road between Zaporizhzhia and Voronezh. Probably that's the aim of the operation. The Russians are, however, still attacking or fighting in the region of Voronezh, according to the information from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry for the 25th of February. So that is the current situation with the Ukrainians conducting major counter-offensive operations. All of them are localized but across the entire Ukraine war. So this is just one of them. So we move on away from Voronezh. Over at the Kupiansk front, we have the mention of Kupiansk on the 24th by the Russians. Petropavlivka is mentioned by the Ukrainians on both days, and Stepova Novosilka was mentioned also on the 24th by the Russian Defense Ministry. Geolocation of FPV drone strike hitting a pickup truck inside the Kupiansk. So the fighting, the strategic situation looks something like this. With the Russians mainly doing more or less the same thing. I think strategically nothing have changed. We move on to the Borova front. At the Borova front, we have the mention of Kurakhove by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 24th. Zaporizhzhia is mentioned on both days by the Ukrainians. Kurakhove is mentioned on the 24th. Lozova is mentioned by the Russians on the 24th and 25th. Borovska and Andreevka is mentioned by the Ukrainians, and Nadia is mentioned by the Ukrainians on the 25th. This on the 24th. So a lot more on the 24th. And so the Russians are making a lot of push. Particularly, they are looking at Lozova as the main push, and whilst the Ukrainians are talking a bit more about all the other places like this. So anyway, strategically, it's basically more or less the same thing, because there's not much frontline changes here, and the Ukrainians are very aware of this danger of letting the Russians have a bigger foothold than what it is already. So they are doing their best to reinforce this area here to keep the Russians at bay from Borova, because if the Russians take Borova, this crossing will be gone. It will be become Russian, and then the Ukrainians are going to have a much bigger problem if they have two crossings getting lost. So that's what it is, because after this crossing is going to be all skill. And the entire front line here will be compromised if they lost this. So that's the consequences. So anyway, over the northern flank of the Liman front. So let me see, how do I know? Yeah. The northern flank of the Liman front, we have the mention of Makiivka by the Russian Defense Ministry on both days. Kateriniivka was mentioned on one day on the 24th by the Ukrainians. Ukrainians are talking a lot about Novosilka as well as Zelena Dolena, which is both not mentioned by the Russians. The Russians are mainly talking about Makiivka. We have some slight frontline change based on Rybar, the pro-Russian source mapping, small little thing. Whereas the Ukrainians are talking a lot more about Novosilka as well as the Russian push towards Zelena Dolena as well as Kateriniivka. So there must be some kind of operation in this sector in the south The Russians, of course, don't want to talk about it. That's understandable because they don't want to review their operations. But the Ukrainians are talking about it. So that's all from this northern flank of the Liman front. On the southern flank of the Liman front, we have the mention of Yapolivka by the Ukrainians on the 25th, Toretsk on the same day as well, Borova on the 24th. And so that's also the Russians are making some smaller pushes around here, seemingly. Geolocation of FPV drone strike on Ukrainian logistic was noted as Zaporizhzhya. So that's about it. Moving into the Siversk front. At the Siversk front, we have the announcement by the Russian Defense Ministry of the capture of BILOHORIVKA. This is at least on since the time I started to note the dates, this is the second time the BILOHORIVKA has been claimed to be captured. Of course, the Russians have claimed capture of BILOHORIVKA multiple times. So this is the second time, at least on our mapping records here. So the last time was in May 20th in 2024. So they have captured this again. So yeah, you can see the deep state, last year May was very angry about the lies about the occupation of BILOHORIVKA. So anyway, this is claimed by the Russians. And fighting is reported BILOHORIVKA though. Ukrainian Defense Ministry did talk about it yesterday. Velyka is under siege, reported by both sides. BILOHORIVKA is mentioned by the Ukrainians. Siversk is mentioned by the Russians. So the Siversk, the Ivano-Darivka one and Siversk one might be related. Maybe the Russians have a more advanced position. They are pushing towards Siversk, while the Ukrainians are still talking about Ivano-Darivka. With fighting reported at Velyka. Some small frontline changes noted already in the frontline changes report. I'm not going to rehash. And the Russians are attacking at BILOHORIVKA. So that's about it at the Siversk front. We move to the Bakhmut front. At the Bakhmut front, we have fighting reported at NOVOOCHERETUVATE, according to the Russian Defense Ministry on the 24th. Chasivia is mentioned by both sides on both days. Shavoni is mentioned by the Russians. Not sure it's attack towards it or is it a shelling. Suppression is mentioned by both sides, with frontline changes noted there. So no, the fighting is it looks like this, with the Russians making some more pushes in the central part of the Bakhmut front. And as to Toposki, we have frontline changes with Russian forces geolocated back to a much nearer position to Toposki itself. So the Russians have advanced in this area here, and potentially they could launch an attack into Toposki. Another geolocation of Ukrainian forces, Humvee was noted hit here, but that also shows the Ukrainians are actively trying to defend Toposki. They are holding the line around here. The Russians are trying to push. So that's all from the Toposki region and the Bakhmut front. We move to the Toretsk front. Oh my god, I'm getting very sleepy. Oh god. Save me. Press the like button. Press the subscribe. I feel so much better after you press it. So over at the Toretsk, we have a very interesting situation. Geolocation of Ukrainian forces showing that they have attacked into Toretsk from the Krimsky region. However, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry mentioned on both Toretsk and Krimsky that the Russians are attacking on both days. So it really depends on how you want to interpret this. It's very hard to interpret what the hell is happening. The Russians already conclude that it's captured, but this geolocation now shows otherwise, that the Ukrainians are coming back. It is a Ukrainian attack. And then Skibinivka is mentioned by the Russians on the 24th. So the current situation is that the Battle of Toretsk seemingly reignites. So definitely there is fighting around here. So let's see whether the Russians will acknowledge it at all. So let's move on. Over at the northern flank of the Pokrovsk front. The northern flank have went really quiet. You can see the fighting is also only mentioned at Tarasivka as well as Vodyanny Druhi. All is reported by the Ukrainian side. It seems like the Russians are pretty happy with the current line. Ever since they reached this line, they hardly do a lot of assault seemingly. So let's wait and see. Over at the Minohrad sector, we have fighting reported at Promin, over at Pokrovsk as well as Shevchenko, with claims that the Russians have expanded control around Shevchenko. And so Promi is mentioned by the Ukrainians, Pokrov by the Ukrainians, and then the Russians mentioned about Shevchenko. So that's about it in the Minokhrad sector. Over at the Pokrov sector, we have a lot more things happening around here and some very significant ones. So so let me see, how do I fit everything in? Yeah, a bit difficult. So I just want to highlight Serhievka is mentioned. So so to just cover that, there is a Russian Defense Ministry mentioned about it on both days. So it is a push in that direction. Otherwise, we have Pokrov, Shevchenko already mentioned. Leontovishki was mentioned by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 24th. Vivrove is mentioned by the Russians mainly. Pischany is mentioned by the Ukrainians and Ryba. Kotline, the Russians attacking here, is reported by the Ukrainians. And then Udashny is mentioned by the Russians and Ukrainians. Modetsky is mentioned by the Ukrainians. So Uspenivka is mentioned by the Russians, and the Ukrainians allegedly is counterattacking. So while the Russians claim to have expanded control at the north and the southeast of Kotline, as well as around Shevchenko, the Ukrainians mentioned map that Deep State UA map in their latest mapping that they have taken the most of Kotline back. This is a massive frontline change for the Ukrainians if it's true, but it's a claim right now. They also have counterattack over at Uspenivka. So as I mentioned, the counterattacking operations is across the Ukraine. The Ukrainians are really doing a lot of counterattacking operations these past 3 days, and we can now see some of these potential results, but we cannot be sure. Like Pischany is one of them. That was more recent around these last 2 weeks. So the Ukrainians are trying to do counterattacks. So Toretsk is also another one. That weird punch into Toretsk. So at Kotline, this is a very big change. I mean, it could potentially means that the Ukrainians push around 1 kilometer or 1.5 kilometers, but they say that the southern side is still under Russian control, most likely the railway line around here, and they say that Ukrainians have taken all of this ground. So the parallel universe is here because this is previously mapped as confirmed because the Russians were geolocated in these two positions. So now this changed again. So let's see, we have this parallel universe here. Uspenivka is similar. The Ukrainians have taken the entire western half of Uspenivka due to this counterattack. So similarly, this is noted by Deep State UA. Some geolocation of Borova, which is engineering vehicle getting hit. Over in the southern flank of the Pokrov front, we have the Russians mapping that they have taken the entirety of Nedievka by Ryba, the pro-Russian source corroborating the Russians, or at least reflecting the Russian Defense Ministry's claim. They also mapped the expansion of the grounds in the northern flank of Preobrazhenka. Ukrainian Defense Ministry, Ukrainian mapping, Deep State UA considered that the Russians did make some advance in the north of Preobrazhenka, as well as taking Zaporizhzhia as they push towards Troitsky. So I need to zoom in. My eyes is getting a bit tired. Oh my god! Now you can see my eyes is getting a bit weird. So the Ukrainian mapping claimed that the Russians have taken the entirety of Zaporizhzhia. So this bone here is taken and eaten by the Russians, and then the Russians now conducting this operation in the northern flank, which is confirmed and mapped by the Ukrainians, except that this buttress here, this fatter place is Russian claims. So the Russians are conducting a potential pincer around Preobrazhenka, and they also potentially can attack directly to Troitsky. So that's all. Zaporizhzhia mentioned by the Deep State UA, and Preobrazhenka, of course, similarly by the Ukrainians, and then by the mapping as well. So we move on to the Andriivka front. At the Andriivka front, we have the fighting mainly around this unclear sector, where the Russians are attacking in the Battle of Andriivka. Ulakli as well as Constantinople. The information is mentioned by the Russian and Ukrainian Defense Ministry for Andreyevka. Ulakli is by the Ukrainians, Constantinople is by both sides. So, most likely the most accurate is that the fighting is at Andreyevka and Constantinople, with and unlikely to be at Ulakli. So, and then some frontline changes was noted as the Russians seem to be continuing to be in this area here along the highway at Andreyevka. So that's all from Andreyevka front. Over at the Velyka Novosilka front, which I did mention, I think in the frontline changes report, eventually I'm going to call this the Koma front by the look of it, because Velyka Novosilka is here and the front line has basically have moved a bit further. So we need to break this into half. This is one part, this is the other part. So over in the northern part, we have the Russians capturing NOVOOCHERETUVATE, with mapping confirming the capture, and the Russians have already arrived on the western part of Skutny. And the Russians also expanded control in the direction of Bulatske and Privyone. This is mapped by the pro-Russian side. So this is not confirmed yet. This advance towards these two towns, Bulatske and Privyone, is not confirmed to be so near. The front line is not so to be so near, but the one over at Skutny, this is confirmed. This area here is confirmed. So just to show you, this is confirmed. This is from confirmed capture. This is mapped by the Ukrainian mapping Deep State UA, confirming the Russians have advanced in this sector. And the Russians have similarly going to be entering Skutny from the southwest. As you can see, they are not exactly inside yet, but this is a very tiny town or village. So, the Russians are likely to capture it very, very quickly. So this one is a Ryba, this pro-Russian claim. So that's all. Geolocation of Russian forces getting hit by Ukrainians south of Bulatske. So that's about it. Nearby, over at the Novopil region, the Russian forces, according to the Russian mapping, have taken the Novosilka. This is the corroboration of the announcement of the capture since December last year, as well as the Russians mapping some buffer zone in the northwest of Rivnopil. So the Russians seemingly advanced in this sector. So, and then fighting is reported at Novopil according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 24th. So the Russians are probably attacking, directly in this way. So that's all from the Velyka Novosilka front. Over at the Zaporizhzhia front, we have some actions over at Huepole sector, and then the rest is mainly around Kherson sector with a little bit of Kharkiv. At the Huepole sector, we have the fighting reported here according to the Russian Defense Ministry. Geolocation of Russian airstrike, Fab 3000 hit Huepole. So the Fab 3000 has becoming more common. I think nowadays I don't see the 500 at least. Yeah, nowadays they seem to use a lot of 3000. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, not sure exactly, if that's the new modus operandi now. There is fighting reported in Novo Andreyevka on the 25th. Shebaki is mentioned on both days by the Russians and the Ukrainians. Mali Shebaki is mentioned on the 25th by the Ukrainians. Petikaki is mentioned by the Ryba. And Kherson is mentioned by both Russian and Ukrainian Defense Ministry. So the Russians are definitely conducting some offensive operation in this sector, hitting multiple positions from Novo Andreyevka, Shebaki, Mali Shebaki, Petikaki, and Kherson. So we'll definitely wait. I think the intensity is not super high. So that's all. And then we move to the Kherson front. At Kherson front, or the Kherson front, the Russian Defense Ministry mentioned multiple places that they shelled at, including Stepne, Tokarivka, and Podnyantivka. They did mention Pre-Dniprovsk, but because I already mentioned, if they mentioned Pre-Dniprovsk, I'm going to put it as an attack. Because the front line is getting really close, so the Russians are probably attacking in the direction of Pre-Dniprovsk. Then there is this interesting information from the Ukrainian side. They say that the Russians are attacking the settlements towards the settlement of Sadove, which is here. So the Russians attack in the islands. I'm not entirely sure. And then we have geolocation of Russian forces basically on the outskirts of Dachi, confirming the Russians have moved north of Oleshki towards Dachi. So the Russians are seemingly really conducting some kind of operations in Kherson. There is some rumors now started some rumors that the Russians are now planning to conduct an amphibious operation across the Dnipro River into the northern half of Kherson. If it's true, yeah, Ukrainians is going to get very stretched, but not sure yet. So this is not a confirmed information yet, but the rumors are there. And then we have frontline changes, to reflect this possibility. So let's continue to wait and see how this continue to develop. And there's another geolocation. This is another FAB bomb, another airstrike on this harbor or this port region in the south of Kherson. So that's it. So this is the summary or the SITREP for the day of 1097 to 1098 for the 24th to 25th of February. So thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe, check out the other channels, the DPA War channel, DPA News channel. And if you like geopolitics, you don't have friends who bothers and cares about global affairs, join the DPA Open Mic. We talk about geopolitics, war and military stuff, politics, culture, economics, finance every single week. So check out DPA Open Mic as well. Just search DPA Open Mic. And I'll see you guys in the next update.